Once we understand who we are and create a life that reflects the best version of that person, that is when we will recognize the achievements that we've been dreaming of our entire lives. It truly is about being ourselves. And until we do that, we will never get to the places that we desire to go. So I always say, be you, be happy, be authentic. I feel like that is so much of it.
Hello and welcome back to the Beards and Business Show. As always, I am your host, Anthony Pacheco. Joining me today is Ryan Miller, a well-known performance coach and the founder of Fit Health. In addition, Ryan is the host of his own podcast, Authentic Conversations, and he serves on the Forbes Coaches Council. He has served as a director of sales and marketing, a chief development officer, and as well a pastor of a church. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thanks, Anthony. It's good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, hey, to get started, I know our audience wants to know a little bit about you. There's a lot about you on the internet. And so tell us a little bit about who Ryan James Miller is.
So I fought really hard to keep all the bad stuff off. That should be that should be number one. So I am a husband to a wife of just over 20 years now. We celebrated 20 years in March of 2021, which was just an unbelievable feat in and of itself. Nearly got divorced thanks. Yeah, we survived a near divorce and about 4.5 years in. And so just amazing to celebrate that. I have two daughters that are 19 and 12. So they're amazing, wonderful kids, and yet dealing with preteen and a late teen is chaos on a regular basis because they know everything and we know nothing. Beyond that, I'm super passionate about CrossFit. For me, I have long been an athlete. Through high school, it was basketball and baseball. Moved on later on in my 20s into cycling, and I did endurance sports for quite a few years and loved that, and just found a way to let my competitive juices flow in CrossFit and then stay healthy. And that's crazy for me to say that at 43, I'm in the best shape of my life, still with a lot of room to grow, but I'm really happy about that. Passionate about golf. And then when I have all kinds of free time, I invest that into my business. As a coach, I get to speak, and I just absolutely love what I do. So, all in all, I'm trying to do everything I can to pour all of myself into whatever God brings before me.
That's amazing. So, if you don't mind, I do want to ask a couple of questions about some of the things that you talked about. So, where did you grow up at?
So I was born and raised in Yorba Linda, California, small little city in North Orange County, so Southern California. We're, for people out there, we're about 45 minutes southeast of LA, 90 minutes north of San Diego, and that's if there's no traffic. So I was born and raised here. I moved around a couple of times, but within about a 20-mile radius, both out of my house at a period of time, when it was time to grow up and get out. But even when I got married and bought a home, we bought a home a block from where I grew up. So I stayed really tight to the circle I'm in. And we're fortunate to live in a great community and a lot of good people around us that I get to continue to do business with. So it's been pretty good.
That's awesome. So you said you've been married 20 years.
Yeah. Right?
Two daughters. Congratulations.
Yeah.
So,
thank you.
And best shape of your life. So you're not sporting the dad bod, huh?
It's funny because, I'm in the gym 5 to 6 days a week. I work really hard. I'm, very competitive with myself and, some of the other guys in the gym. And yet I would say that it doesn't always look that way. Just, I guess, genetically, there's guys in my gym that definitely are in better shape, but, just unbelievable six pack, just absolutely jacked. And that's not me. But, when I have to think kind of overall about where I am in the stage of my life, being in my early 40s and a lot of friends that are really sporting dad bods, as well as just, the ability to just get up and go and to feel the energy every single day to put my all into it. That really is what kind of all encompasses that, claim to be in the best shape of my life. But definitely physically, I mean, definitely the strongest I've been. And so that feels pretty good too.
What drove you to CrossFit?
So interestingly enough, I was previous to CrossFit, I briefly mentioned that I was a cyclist. And so I was riding about 150 to 200 miles a week. Really, really loved it. The problem that I was having is to get a really good workout in, I was gone anywhere from about an hour and a half during the week each time I rode, to on the weekends, I was gone for 4 or 5 hours, got on an 80, 100-mile ride or something. And so it was getting harder and harder to commit that much time just away from the family and other things. And as that was happening, I met a guy who was a firefighter, and he was kind of head of fitness for a couple of local stations in the Newport Beach area. And so he kept bugging me, come try. He had a full setup in his garage, and I just started to get drawn more and more to it. And then realizing that in 45 minutes to an hour tops, I could destroy myself. I loved the fact that I could get in and get out like that. So 2 years of working out in his garage gym, and then built one in my own. And then that led me to get into a local CrossFit gym here in my area, Resolution CrossFit. And I've been there since 2014, I think, early 2014, and been able to do some local competitions and stuff like that. And that's an unbelievable community too. So yeah, it's been fantastic.
I hear that a lot in the CrossFit community. The community is really what drives a lot of it. And it's those people that are reaching out and being like, hey, just come work out with me. You're going to love it. Just come do it, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because, it definitely has gotten a bad, beating people up and, people getting injured. And there's a lot of irresponsibility with, bringing kind of that macho attitude in and just trying to push yourself too far, not knowing what you're doing. There are also some bad gyms in the sense of just bad leaders. But all in all, what I love about our gym, so we have about 350 members across 2 locations, and it's people of all shapes and sizes. There's kids classes all the way up to, we are sending I think she's 61 or 62-year-old woman to the CrossFit Games this year. She's a breast cancer survivor. Another woman that's she's early 50s. She qualified for the CrossFit Games as well. So they're both going. So it just goes to show you that, it spans across so many different demographics. And then on top of all of that, for the majority of us, we just love being around each other. So you're committed, you're accountable, you're pushing each other, supporting each other. We've just become a big family, and we do holidays together and party together and have fun. And it's fantastic. And so the culture there specifically, but across a lot of gyms, is very similar.
Yeah, that's really awesome. The community piece again is really what's encompassing there, right? And so I'm glad you found a great gym. I've heard of a lot of other people that have found the same.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. So let's take you down. Let's take it down business row real quick. Tell us about your first job or business that you started, and kind of work us through where you are today.
Yeah, well, early on, I did some restaurant work. I worked at a cleaners for 1 day. I delivered pizza for 2 days. So there were those type of jobs. But my first real job, I guess, was I was a car stereo installer at Circuit City. And so that dates me pretty well because they're no longer around. And I did that for about 1.5 years. And after going through a brutal Christmas season of literally sleeping in that shop, I didn't want to do that anymore. So I went to work for a company that was manufacturing wheels for cars, higher end wheels, aftermarket wheels for cars. And I got a warehouse job, and I just wanted to get into that industry. I was into cars. I was racing cars at the time. So I went to work there. And about 6 months in, I was sick of getting dirty every day, just the dust in the warehouse and, just crap piled on me all the time. And I started seeing inside the office how clean those guys and gals were. It was air conditioned. It just seemed so cool. And the more that I got to know them, the more that I was like, gosh, I really want a sales job. But I had no previous experience. I was a people person. I felt like I could do it, but I had no experience. And so I went to the owner of the company at the time and I said, hey, Dennis, I said, I would really, really love an opportunity for a sales job. And he's like, nope, that ain't going to happen. And maybe that was just because I was a punk kid, and there were no opportunities at the time, but I kept bugging him. And eventually, I think it took about another probably 3 or 4 months, and he finally cracked. And he gave me my first real sales job, and I was in love, both because it was an opportunity to build relationships, to meet people, get to know people, but also I started to understand the gift that I would continue to develop throughout my life of being able to help people get what they want and solve problems and produce great outcomes for them. And so it was just the beginning of an amazing journey, and in that aftermarket industry for automotive aftermarket industry for a few years, and then on from there.
Man, value hammer dropped right there. So persistency wears out resistancy, right? And 3 or 4 months of continually asking. You didn't just ask one time and give up and walk away. I mean, to our young people out there, anybody honestly listening right now, this is a key piece. The persistency. He knew what he wanted. He went after it. He didn't just give up after 1, 2, 3 times. He continually went back. So really, really value what you just said there.
Well, and so that wasn't the only time in my career I had to do that. And funny enough, the second time I was presented with an opportunity to do that, so I worked for a couple of different companies in that industry, had some success. I really liked it, but I was kind of getting tired out of the cool factor at that time of just being in that industry, and I wanted to make more money. And so I had topped out. And at that time, I really wanted to break $100,000 a year, and that was just so hard to do in most of those roles. So my stepdad was the VP of sales for this large regional firm that was producing basically black and white construction documents. So old school blueprints, then they were black and white construction documents. And this is now the early 2000s, and they are crushing it, right? Because the housing market's on fire, things are just going wild. And so he had about 20 salespeople that were working for him. And I went to him, and I knew the culture of the company because we did company parties and stuff. And I went to him one day and I just said, Tom, I said, I need to come work there. Like, you guys are killing it. I mean, you're literally printing money. I can go in there. I can kill every single one of your salespeople. Like, I can go in at the top. And my stepdad is a man of honor and integrity. And he also knew the fact that I was still quite the cocky punk kid. And so he said, you know what, I can't. He said, I just can't play favorites. He goes, I just don't know how we can do this without it just looking like I'm hiring you because you're my son. And so I kept pushing and pushing, and he would not break. And so finally one day, and this is the cockiness of a then 25-year-old or something like that, I went to him and I said, if you do not hire me, I said, I'm going to the CEO who I knew. I said, I'm going to go to the CEO and I'm going to tell the CEO that you are costing them money by not bringing me on as a salesperson. And, very kindly, he said, you know what, if that's what you want to do, go ahead and do it. So the next day I picked up the phone, I called the CEO of the company and I said, Chuck, I said, I've been begging Tom for a job for the last however many months. I said, he thinks that it's going to play favorites. I said, he's costing you money. I said, I believe that if I come and sit down with you and have an interview, that I will show you that I can do what it takes and I'll be one of your top sales guys. And he's like, all right, put your money where your mouth is. So I had an interview with him. That was the first time I had to get in a suit and tie, because before then in the automotive industry, it was very casual. Getting my suit and tie, I go down there, I interview with him. He hired me on the spot. And from that day forward, no exaggeration, we went on to become a national firm, a global firm, a publicly traded company. I was never outside of the top 3 in that company, which would become a couple hundred sales reps across the globe. Never was outside of the top 3, and I set sales records there time and time again. So thankfully, I was able to back up my words, but it was the persistency and to fight and to say, look it, I know I'm good and I know I can do this. I needed my attitude to be tempered a little bit, but it was the fuel that fired me to go in there and do well and produce for them. And that was really the beginning of the corporate side of my life, and really gaining a good understanding for what would help propel me to start my own business and then go in and consult and coach other people.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's interesting. That persistency again. You're most people in that situation would go up and they would say, hey, can I have a job? And they'd be like, I probably shouldn't, but yeah, go ahead. One, your stepdad having just the honor to make sure that he was doing the right thing, but then the persistency of you to let him know, hey, this is what I'm going to go do. And he's like, go do it. You go talk to the CEO, and he had to have seen the persistency. He's like, listen, if this guy is, ballsy enough to come sit in my office, what could he do with complete strangers?
Yep.
And so, yeah, that's a really awesome story. Appreciate you showing. Tell us a little bit about that transition. So you got a taste of the professional life, right?
Yep.
And I say that loosely, but you know what I mean. So you got a little taste of that. So how did that catapult you to where you are today?
Yeah. Well,
Launching your first business, I guess.
Yeah, first it knocked me on my ass. So I worked there from 2006 till 2011, which was both the peak and then the crash of the housing market and the economy as a whole. And so I set records. I was running a sales team. The last year that I worked there, I was actually being bred to go out and run a division somewhere around the country. So I went through a leadership development management program. I learned finance, so a lot of things. And yet we were getting crushed. Our stock price was just in the tank because, again, being so closely tied to the construction industry. And so I eventually, long story short, there's a lot more to it, but I got laid off. And it was because I was the top earning salesperson and they needed the money and they could protect most of the accounts. And so I had a decision to make when I got laid off, which was go work for somebody else or really pursue this passion that I thought I had had for a long time, which was to go out and start something on my own. I had a mentor at that company and in that industry that was a sales trainer. I thought that was something, that I could do. And so talked about it with my wife, prayed over it with my wife. And as crazy as it sounds, at that time, we had a mortgage. She was at home with 2 little kids and we had $500 to our name. We had $500 in our checking account, no savings account, no 401k. Like we were spending money faster than we were making it. But we both deeply believed that it was the right thing to do. And so towards the end of 2011 is when I officially launched my sales consulting, sales training, sales coaching business. It was very, very sales focused at the time. And I just went for it. It wasn't all rainbows and unicorns, a lot of brutal months, a lot of financial support from friends and family, from our local church at the time to get us through some very dark financial moments. But eventually we hit our stride, and I cannot thank God enough for that difficult, season of life to get me to where I am today.
Yeah. What did you learn the most, do you believe, out of that time, that difficult time?
I was very prideful leading up to that moment. So just around the same time that I went to work for that company, I came to faith, and yet I still had not been completely broken in terms of how proud I was, how independent I was. I grew up in a single home to a single mom and had to be the man of the house at 6 years old. And so in many ways I was forced into that, but then it just kind of fed this ego that got really twisted and distorted. And my success was part of my identity, our house, a Mercedes, right? All these things. And so when everything broke and it continued to just fizzle over time. And we had a short seller house in 2013. It was years of run out. And what I learned over that period of time was I couldn't do it on my own. Like I needed to be willing to be poured into, whether that was a wise word, whether that was a check in the mailbox. I actually needed to verbally ask for help from other people to humble myself enough to say that I cannot go through life on my own. And interestingly enough, from a faith perspective, that's everything that the Bible teaches. And yet, even though I'd come to faith, it was the one thing that I was struggling so hard to see, because again, I felt like I could do it myself. And so that is something that I've continued to remind myself of and still struggle with. Not the pride so much, but definitely that willingness to open up and ask for help. And so I've had to be very intentional about putting people around me that will force that on to me, so I continue to humble myself and open up to it.
That's another value hammer that we just got dropped there. The humility, right? Having humility, being able to step aside and understand that you're not going to be the best at every single piece of your life. And there are going to be countless people that can pour into you.
Yep,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Cool. So first business, got it up and going. That was all, part of that process. Take us through the rest of the journey here.
Yeah, man, there's so much that we would be here for hours, but I'll give you a kind of a 30,000 foot overview and touch on a few points. So I finally hit my business stride in early 2013. Finally started picking off some really good clients. I was finding my groove and what I was able to offer from an ROI perspective. And so my client repertoire was full. Like I was just doing well. And one of the clients that I was consulting for, this fast forwards all the way until the end of 2014, was a regional employee benefits firm here in Southern California. I was doing some consulting around helping them bring a product to market. So they had a technology product that they were developing. And so they wanted help around messaging and then actually equipping their salespeople to bring that to market. So I was consulting with them, and that was 2 hours a week, turned into 2 days a week over about a 6-month period. It was just getting more involved. The CEO was running the sales team. She was becoming less and less able because of time as they were growing. And so they offered me a job. And it was the worst time because my business was doing well. I was working 3 days a week, and then I was also investing 2 days a week into the church that I was a pastor of. And so I said no. And I continued to say no for months. And then finally, the COO, she came to me one day and she said, she said, we have to hire somebody to lead this team. If it's not you, it's going to be somebody else. And I'm like, all right, let me go talk to my wife. We'll pray through it and I'll get back to you with a decision. And I went to my wife, and she's always had so much faith in me, trust my decision. But she said, you know what? She said, maybe this is the time that you take a role like this. It's the stability we need. There's benefits. It's a great organization, great people. There's a lot of opportunity. And then you can go back into business for yourself later. So I took that job in June of 2015 with the intention that I was going to work there until the managing partner, or the CEO at the time, he exited, which was about 7 to 10 years. And then I would go back into business for myself. I had no idea though what was about to happen, which was the end of 2016. My coworker, my counterpart on the client service side, so I was running sales and marketing, she was running client service. At 30 years old, she took her own life, which just sent a splinter through the organization. Definitely challenged some relationships, caused a lot of just stress around trust and just a lot of other things. Just everybody was having a really hard time, understandably, including me. And so that was devastating. Within about 2 weeks, we lost our top salesperson, which he took a good amount of business with us. And then the beginning of 2017, we merged with 23 other firms to create a national footprint. And so all these changes are happening, and all of a sudden I'm starting to question, like, do I really want to be here? Like, is this really it for me? And yeah, I was stubborn. I was holding out. I was trying to fight through it. And then in October of 2017, I was in the crowd in Las Vegas when the mass shooting took place at Route 91, along with my wife and 5 of our friends. And one of our friends was one of the 58 that was killed that night. So when I went back to work about 2 weeks later, first day back in the office, I'm sitting in the office in Newport Beach, looking out the window. And I remember saying to myself, what in the hell are you doing with your life? And it was so crazy because I was making good money. I had stock option. I was habitual, disciplined, in good shape, family's good. Like, why would I ask that question? And the reality was, after 7 months of prayer and discussion with people close to me, work with my executive coach, the reality was I just wasn't 100% aligned to what I truly believed I was called to do, which was to use the gifts and talents I could to help other people extract the same out of themselves and then go live that, to go live the best version of that so they could live that life. And so I resigned that job in May of 2018, and I just went back at it. And so since May of 2018, I've been a lot more focused on one-to-one coaching, again, helping people to develop, who they are so they can create that life and then ultimately achieve the goals and dreams that they want, doing speaking, doing some consulting here and there. And so I again, that journey led me to a place where I've never felt better about who I am and what I'm doing. But it definitely didn't come without its fair share of scars along the way.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're talking about, because I think this is a lot of the population right now. They're working a great job. They have everything seems together on the outside, but emotionally inside, you don't even know what's going on. And it took a life-changing event, something really, really big, to capture your attention, to make you wake up. It's almost like the Matrix, right? Where we're sitting there living our life, everything's going great, and then all of a sudden you wake up and you experience this newfound freedom and understanding of really what you were meant to do. So appreciate you sharing that. I know a lot of people are going to enjoy that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, today coaching business is going really well. I know that you have a lot of things that are going on with that. We're going to get into a little bit more of that in a minute, but let's talk a little bit about the beard. When did we start growing the beard, and how did that impact you along your journey?
So this is so funny. This is probably like my favorite part, because I don't know. I've never told this story, and I don't know. And it's funny to me. So I'd had a goatee and a mustache from definitely the time my wife and I started dating. So we're going back to like the late 90s, which, that was like the goatee and mustache era.
Yeah.
And dyeing my goatee and mustache, and, Dalmatian spotted hair, and bright red hair, blue hair, like all these things. And so I was always kind of like out there with all that stuff. And then I think probably 2000, when I got that corporate job, 2006, 2007, I shaved it all to just clean up my face, corporate image, blah, 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 whatever. Well, I became a pastor and helped to plant a church in 2012. And one of the things that I did during that transition was I went off to a pastoral training and leadership development program at a church up in Seattle. And for anybody that is church familiar, this was Mars Hill Church, which now doesn't exist anymore, in the kind of new reform tradition. And so I go up there for the first time. We were in Seattle. It was August of 2012. And I'm in this room of 130, mostly guys, some ladies, mostly guys. And, 75 or 80% of them have beards. And it just looked so cool. And I was in a cohort of about 12 guys. We would stay together the whole time and stay really connected. And most of them had beards. And so I remember going back to my wife when I got home from Seattle from that trip. And I'm like, babe, I really want to grow a beard. And she's like, absolutely not. That is a terrible idea. It's not going to look good. I love your face, blah, 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 whatever. So I worked on her and worked on her and worked on her. Well, fast forward all the way to January of 2013. I go up there for kind of a mid-year trip to Seattle again. I'm around all these guys all over again, right? And now they're kind of like in a fun way, but kind of like giving me a hard time, like, can't grow the beard, you won't grow the beard. I'm like, my wife. So I called my wife in the middle of my trip, and I'm like, babe, these guys are challenging me to grow a beard. Like, how about if you just let me grow a beard until we're done with class? So that would have been till May of that year. So 5 months. I said, just let me do that, and that's going to be it. And she's like, I'm so against this idea. I'm so over it, but whatever, you can do it. So I started to grow my beard. And we got around to May, and I was waiting when we graduated that she was going to be like, you're done, you're over it. And I just remember this conversation, and I'm like, it's growing on you, isn't it? You like it? Well, yeah, I mean, it's not bad. I'm like, no, I think you actually really like it. and it started to really grow on her. And so then I kept growing it, and actually it's really, really short now. I mean, for a while there, like, it was closer to your length, fairly bushy. Like that was a thing. Like I was just kind of like letting it, go. I'm manicured, but letting it grow for a while. And so, yeah, I mean, it just became the thing. And now it's crazy because she would die. I would die too, but she would die if I shaved my beard. Like it is now just a part of me, and I
Mhm.
love it. And I never want it to go away. Like the only thing I'm waiting for is I'm starting to get some salt and pepper a little bit in my hair and in
Mhm.
my beard. I can't wait until it's all gray. Like that is my ultimate dream with my beard and my hair, is I cannot wait to go full gray. Like it is going to be epic, epic.
That is awesome. So what a cool story. So for one thing, I'm gonna do a poll on LinkedIn about this because I think it's really unique. Like top 3 reasons why men won't grow a beard. One, they believe it's, like you said, you shaved going into that industry because it was quote unquote kind of the norm at the time, right?
Yep.
So that
Yep.
professional thing. Two, number 2 reason, they don't think it will come in full, right? They
Yep.
don't, they're scared of what it's going to look like, all of that piece. And number 3, probably the wife, right? Spouse or significant other is like, nope, no way. Because every time I ask people, I'm like, why don't you grow it out a little bit more than that? And they're like, oh, the wife won't let me.
Yeah. And that becomes the number one answer by far. Like that is the number, which rightfully so, right? I want to make my wife happy. I want her to kiss me. I,
Absolutely.
I want to hug up on her. I don't want her to not like what I look like. But I think what's interesting is, and I've heard this story so much from guys when we get beard talking, which is kind of funny to say that, but it ends up growing on most spouses. Almost all of them end up liking it. And it was funny because as I was growing mine, then coming back into the circles I was in, more of the guys around me were like, well, I'm going to grow mine too. And then they would stick with it. And
Mhm.
so it was just funny to see how, and then you just notice it more. And then, we're talking about it more. And then you're on podcasts talking about So it's just like, it becomes a thing. And so then I just had to take on all the other really cool stuff that came with having a beard, which was I started smoking a pipe,
Mm.
because bearded guys smoke pipes. Like it's just really cool looking. That was like Charles Spurgeon thing to do, or Abe Lincoln. And I started to take on a greater appreciation for whiskey and bourbon. So all through
Mm.
my early 20s, I was a big Crown Royal guy, but it was just because it mixed well with Coke, and I could just get drunk if I drank a lot of it. When I stopped drinking to drink too much and started to appreciate liquor, it was just like, bearded guys sit and sip whiskey. Like that is the cool thing to do. So it just became the thing.
Absolutely. No, yeah,
But
it's
the one
funny.
thing I can't
Go
the
ahead.
one thing I can't do is grow that amazing mustache that you have. Like I have tried to like get it. It won't go. It will not go. And that is the one dream that I don't think will ever be fulfilled in my life, is just for a short period of time, just to tear off one of those amazing curly stashes like that.
It's funny because this was the end goal. So I went into it with this in mind. So from the very beginning, when it started growing, I would take a comb. My wife said I was crazy, like how obsessed I was with it. And I would just push it out to the side, like sitting on the couch. I would be sitting on the couch. We'd all be watching a family movie together. I have family, got 4 kids. And I'm sitting there just doing like this. And she's like, I don't believe anybody manicures their beard as much as you. I said, the outcome is going to be amazing. And she loves the beard. She's the one that encouraged me to grow it.
I love it.
Yeah, so yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it is unique. It's different. It catches people's attention really quickly in public. So yeah, it's been really awesome.
It's so good. That is so good.
So any thoughts more on the beard as far as professional environment? Did you feel like you have to stay with it pretty groomed and tight fit, or did you feel like you've had any issues with it?
I mean, here I am, right, on a podcast, bearing myself for the world, not just in a beard, but in a hat and a t-shirt. So, I think that, you have to know your audience. And I do think that context is important. I would never allow somebody else to dictate how I show up to do work. I mean, that's one of the reasons I got into business for myself, right? As I'm just going to do what I want to do. But I still want to be respectful. So I do keep it a little bit shorter now. It's a little bit easier for me to manage just because of the way mine grows, but it's just cleaner. My hair stays pretty tight too. So, that's important. If I'm going to go, particularly something in person to kind of some speaking event that a client's hired me for, particularly if I'm going to show up in front of their team or in front of their clients or something, I'm going to be a lot more considerate of that. I'm trying to keep the neckline clean and, not letting the stragglers go everywhere. I use a beard oil to make sure everything stays intact. So I think it is important, at least, from my perspective, that I am within the confines to some degree of being respectful of the audience I'm out there to serve. At the same time, what I will say, and I love this, is, in the age that we live in today, back to 2006 when I got hired for that job, and we were wearing suits and ties every single day, even though it didn't even really require it. I mean, we were seeing people in the construction industry that were in like t-shirts and shorts, but it was the kind of corporate look to have. I appreciate now that there's been some flexibility there in terms of dress, flexibility in terms of facial hair, and even piercings to some degree. Tattoos, I mean, I wear quite a few of them, and it's become a lot more acceptable. I know that there are still people that have problems with it, but I really appreciate the fact that it's become more open and okay and allowable to wear a beard in public. So I really like it. And I mean, most people do. If you ask them, most people think it's pretty cool. Even if they don't want to admit it in a corporate environment, most people think it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. No, I'm in complete agreement with you. And, we've talked a couple of times on the show about, going out in public, especially the length, right? So if you had when you had yours a little bit longer, it took so much more time to manicure it, to take care of it, and to be able to go out in public. Like, you couldn't just roll out of bed, kind of look over yourself and then walk out the door.
No.
It took time. You had to prepare to go to Home Depot.
Well, and for, all those idiots that were encouraging me to grow a beard didn't tell me about beard oil. So it was years before I realized. So, it was just as good as, obviously, you come out of the shower, it's pretty good. But if you wake up and you're not washing it, then it's scraggly. And, eventually it starts to go in weird directions. And so one day somebody turned me on to, you should use some, and it's been years now, but you should use this specific beard oil. And I was like, oh my gosh, actually beard balm is what I use. And
right.
I mean, now every once in a great while, I will forget to do it before I leave the house. And I feel like I'm naked, and it's just because it's a little scraggly. I'm like, I gotta go back. I gotta get my beard balm. So yeah.
I got the blow dryer out and the rolling it down, and this takes the longest time and get some wax on it. So, it's like if I'm not going out anywhere that day, right, or I don't have a show, or if I'm not meeting with somebody on video, it's like, do we have to meet on video? Is it something, can we just do it by phone? Because it's so time consuming, but I love it so much at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great conversation piece, especially when you're wearing that stash. I mean, that stash is it.
It's funny. First time I meet a client, or if I'm talking to somebody, it's just an instant icebreaker. There's no question of anything else. It's just kind of like, hey, we're all here. Wow, that's an awesome stash. Like every time, right? And if I don't get that, and I have had a couple of people not say anything about it, you can kind of feel it, like they're uncertain. Should I say something? Should I not say something? So it's been awesome. Hey, thanks for sharing a lot with us, Ryan. Just tell us a little bit about, this part of the episodes, kind of talking about what you have going on right now. I know you're doing some really incredible things out there. Anything you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, so I will say that I'm focusing myself in kind of 3 areas. So I'll say generally, you can see the hat back on the wall. I've really adopted this mantra of being authentic. And so I am focused on bringing together as many people as possible into what we're just calling the Be Authentic community. It's free. It will never be dinged some premium rate. It's an opportunity for people to come together, to be supported, to be encouraged, to be built up. And so we have a text community that people, receive texts a couple times a week, and contests, and they get hats and stickers and stuff like that. And every once in a while, we'll run some challenges around equipping them to become more authentic. And so that's kind of the general space that we play in most often. From that, or in addition to that, there's then two specific areas that I do more intentional work in as it relates to my coaching practice. One is, and kind of how we connected, is in the employee benefits space. Because of the time that I did spend with that insurance broker, with definitely some challenges, but I was so fortunate to build so many relationships. And so because of that, I've had the opportunity to do consulting and coaching both in group and one-on-one environments for a lot of agencies and individuals across the country. And I've just loved to help people make an impact in an industry that's desperately in need of it. And most recently, I have connected with, actually, I've known Andy Neary, who's also a coach, for quite a few years. And we put our heads together about 6 months ago and decided, let's do something together. He focuses a little bit more branding and marketing, overlaps into sales. I focus more on sales, overlap into branding and marketing. We were like, we can do something together. So we hosted a one-day event, half-day event. It went great. And so from that, we've launched this broker branding excellence community, just the BBE community. And so it's an opportunity to bring men and women together, consultants, owners, vendor partners that are in sales roles, and help them all come together to not only hone those skills around branding, marketing, and sales, but to build a community of support, encouragement, accountability, and a like-mindedness so we can all move the ball forward. And we've done that at a really low financial barrier to entry, because we're trying to help the people that sometimes struggle to invest into themselves to be able to be a part of that. So that's in the benefits community. It's been wonderful. We're actually going to be launching that community in terms of the action will start to take here in July. So we're really, really excited because that's right around the corner. And then the other piece, the other area of focus is specifically around successful married businessmen. And that is because of just my own personal story, struggling through, again, some marriage problems, financial issues, and really coming to this place, a realization that we don't have a lot of places to go as men in finding a healthy community. There's a lot of attraction to go make a lot of money, to have hot chicks, to drive a Ferrari, whatever. But the reality of, like, where do I do all those things in the sense of how do I become as successful as humanly possible, all the while having an environment where I can talk about shame, and I can talk about fear, and I can wrestle through those things. I can figure out how to invest as much into my family as I am into my business, though my business is metrics driven and my family is just kind of feelings driven. So we've created this Foundations to Freedom community and academy that will actually be launching in September. And that is going to be an opportunity for men to get involved into a 10-week academy. That will then roll into a community in perpetuity for as long as they want to be a part of it. And so I'm really, really excited about that and passionate about that.
That's really awesome. And we're going to put links to each one of these in the show notes. For a number of years, I was a men's minister for a number of years. And, that was the one topic that continually came up. It was, money, sex, and power, right? I mean, those are like the three things that always come up. And speaking to that, I think is going to help a lot of men that might be struggling with where they are right now. We call it midlife crisis a lot of times, but typically what it is, it's a revelation. You're revealed what has gone on in the past of your life, and now you're looking towards the future, and you're like, me and my wife barely speak to each other, or we're really struggling, multiple times with this. I only feel like I'm here financially, or I'm only here for, these four things, and other than that, I'm not part of it. Or, really bringing back that community. And I love the fact that we've talked about community so much on here. And so, that's going to be stellar.
Yeah, and one of the things that is is heaviest on my heart, I think, is that thank God most people don't go through maybe the devastating tragedy that I went through, in being, a part of a mass shooting. And not everybody's life falls apart. I think where I see this most often happen, and when I'm coaching men one-on-one, this is what I typically find is this is a man that is fairly successful. Home life is pretty good. Things are decently in order. But what they end up finding is that they're often either being kept up at night, or they're running through a lot of stress in the day because their belief is that once they just get this one more thing done or accomplished or achieved, then they can take their vacation. Then they can pick up their hobby. Then they can not work as much. Then they can. And the reality is when we are performance driven, which is a wonderful thing. Like, I am a high achiever. I am all about excellence. I want to make as much money as possible and do as many things as possible for myself, for my family, for my company, whatever. But when that is our primary driver, what we end up doing to ourselves is we end up burying ourselves in this ever-long cycle of just repeating over and over again that story of achieve, reset, pursue, achieve, and it will never end. And so they don't really feel like their life is a mess. It's just like there's just something that's off and they can't figure it out. And so realigning all those things, what's been so fascinating is realigning all those things not only frees them up to actually get to sleep at night or not to be so stressed out or to invest in their family, but the best part is, and this is the promise that I make the least, but the best part is they end up being far more financially successful because they're actually freed up to be the man that they were created to be in the first place. So then they are like in their superpower. It's phenomenal to see. So as you can tell, I'm really, really excited about, that component because again, men need it. I'm one of them. And I just love to see what's been happening so far.
Well, that's awesome. I can't wait for it to launch. I think you're going to have a lot of success with it. I definitely will be putting everything in the show notes and putting it out to our audience as well. And so lasting final thoughts, anything that you'd like to say?
No, I mean, I think again, over the course of, if you've listened to me talk, if you have followed me for any period of time, anybody that will happen to listen to this, what I try to say to everybody is the same thing. It's once we understand who we are and create a life that reflects the best version of that person, that is when we will recognize the achievements that we've been dreaming of our entire lives. It truly is about being ourselves. And until we do that, we will never get to the places that we desire to go. So I always say, be you, be happy, be authentic. I feel like that is so much of it. And I just wish more people would truly believe that and lean into that on the day to day.
A great value hammer right there that you just dropped. And so we really appreciate you being on the show, Ryan. Again, we'll put everything in the show notes, and you can find Ryan Miller basically anywhere on the web. He's got every social media platform and his own website. Cool. Thanks for being on, Ryan.
Thank you.